everyone, and welcome to a very special Q&A for Peacock costume design. I'm Deadline's crafts editor, Ryan Fleming, and joining me today we have from Fight Night, Million Dollar Heist, costume designer Ernesto Martinez.
How are you?
From Poker Face, we have costume designer Leah Katz-Nelson.
Hi, everyone.
And from the Traitors, we have head wardrobe designer Sam Spector. Welcome, everybody. So I am so excited to get into this because all three of these shows are just absolutely fantastic. And I think let's just go chronologically with Fight Night starting in 1970. So, Ernesto,
The
tell
old,
me about, tell me a little bit about some of the inspirations for the costumes.
well, it's 1970. It was a recreation. They let me have, a full reign of what I thought the characters would look like in 1970, and I used a lot of the actual, uh, fashion and of the moment and of the fight itself. I had a lot of research that we did, and then I just ran with it. And I thought Sam Jackson should look like a banker, not a gangster. Um, I like Taraji to scale her back, not to look so much like a hooker. And you know, the, the, Muhammad Ali had to be Muhammad Ali. It had to be the actual boxing gear and boots and all of that. It's been a while now since I did the show. I've done a few more in between, but it was a fun experience. We made almost everything for the characters. Uh, Terrence Howard's wardrobe was very fun because I had to look around that wig, which was quite something. It was kind of fair. I'll say it. uh, we had to match the color palette for the production designer. So we made everything, and we need lots of multiples, things like that. So, is there something in particular?
Well, I'm kind of curious. So you said you made all of the stuff. So there was no outfits that you found. Everything was totally handmade from scratch.
Pretty much for the principals, yes. Like all the suits and coats, and I couldn't. For Kevin Hart, everything had to be made because everything we needed six of everything. They were in gunfights and fights and mudslinging and boxing and throwing and being thrown in trunks of cars. So it was a heist. So yeah, underwear. We had to make the underwear. It had to look period appropriate. Yeah. We used that fine nylon. Yeah, it was fun. A lot of fun.
So when you're designing for a character that's in the 1970s, like let's say Terrence Howard's character, um, what are some of the kind of inspirations for that time period? It seems more like it's a very free period with fashion. Everything kind of seems more open.
The '70s was a very sexy for men. It was incredibly sexy, and I try to use that, especially for Terrence. And for Kevin. Everything was very fitted, and it was fit and flare. The, the pants were very flared, and the tops were very high waisted and very Betty body shape, body forming, and I tried to work on that. The jackets were very fitted, collars were big and oversized, and the shirts were open to the three buttons down. A lot of jewelry. So we did that. I thought it was a very sexy time.
Leo, while Poker Face obviously doesn't take place during that time, uh, someone should probably tell that to Charlie Cale. Uh, could you talk a little bit about designing for this character who's on the run constantly?
Sure. So yeah, we used a lot of I mean, globally, the scope of the show is very much embedded in the 70s sort of aesthetic. The palette leans that way, at least for Charlie, it does. And has sort of a 70s sort of noir sort of mystique around it a little bit. She's a woman on the run living out of her car, but we sort of allow ourselves the space that she kind of can pick up things along the way, because within each story, she becomes kind of embedded in a new community. She takes on a new job, in the process of sort of solving these mysteries. And so, a cap comes with her. In the second season of the show, we charted her course, from the southern part of the United States further north up to New York City. And for each state that she landed in, I added a new color to the palette that represented that place and time and where she was. So even though her sort of origin story is very much embedded in kind of a 70s sort of desert southwestern palette, we built upon that as she got further up to New York, and then added even a little more black into the New York palette of itself. But we did use a lot of 70s vintage. Much like Ernesto's world, where you have to do stunts and multiples and photo doubles and stunt doubles and everything, and you still really want to use the 70s real materials and fabrics. We ended up actually printing a lot of fabric for my stunt doubles and photo doubles. So I would use the hero on our principal actress, on Natasha, and then would manufacture the multiples for the stunt people. Just because our turnaround time was so tight for each episode, every 10 days we did a new movie, basically a new universe. So we sourced constantly for her, and then we had an amazing vendor who would print onto fabrics, and an extraordinary seamstress who could build anything in one day, which is pretty much all she got. Our casting always was exceptionally late, so there were a lot of struggles built in. But yes, we definitely kind of adhered to a 70s through line, and we got to push it a little harder on this season, which was great.
It's amazing hearing the additions to her outfits at each stop too, because she does live out of her barracuda
Yeah.
throughout the whole time.
The world of Poker Face is one where you sort of have to suspend disbelief, even though you need to sort of feel grounded within that particular story. So it gives us some room for artistic license to kind of modulate around a little bit with her sort of Garanimals wardrobe, where things feel like you've seen them before, but you haven't. So it gives us some space to kind of grow within each episode, and to style her different occupations as Charlie would. So even if she's a lunch lady or a ball girl or a parking lot attendant or whatever it is that she becomes each episode, we do it with her look in mind.
And even just that first episode too with Cynthia Erivo, that one was honestly at the beginning very dependent on costume design, the
Yeah.
mystery of it. Can you talk a bit about kind of dressing fauxlicity? I think that's what she was called in the episode.
Yeah, I would start by saying that Cynthia, I could not have asked for a better partner in crafting those 5 women. I mean, sometimes it was 7, depending on where she was. We had 3 hours together collectively before we started filming to do all of those looks. I had done concept boards ahead of time that Ryan and I worked through, and then I presented them to Cynthia. So we had a shorthand and had sort of like agreed on a direction for each of the women. But she was incredibly game, creative, professional, collaborative. I mean, like a dream to work with. And it was just there were some notes kind of embedded in the script of things that felt that there was some specificity we wanted to lean into. But at the same time, sometimes the note would just say like, DJ, BB, DJ. And I wanted to make sure it felt current, that reference point. So I looked at FKA Twigs and other people like that for inspiration. A character being a comparative literature professor who's is a Francophile. So we leaned into tweeds and Victorian cameos and high-necked blouses and that kind of thing. So just spend time kind of delineating each of the different women. And I told this story the other day, but Cynthia also, the audience will never see this, but she picked a fragrance for each of the characters. So she wore a different perfume every time she got dressed for each of the different women. And sometimes we were toggling back and forth all day between the different roles. We dressed photo doubles identically to every one of the women. So she had acting partners that she could be, they could do the blocking with. And in case we caught a shoulder or a piece of someone's ear or arm or whatever, we did it, exactly the same as she looked. But every time she would go back to change, she would change her perfume as well. So I knew who we were dressing because I'd come in the room and I'd smell like something French, and it's like, okay, we're going into the next thing. But she was great.
Fantastic.
We had a great time. She has a million piercings in her ears, so it was a lot of fun to be able to jewel her up and she can wear and do anything. I mean, she's the greatest. Loved her.
I love stories like that where it's something that the audience would never know and it doesn't show at all on the screen except help the actor.
Exactly. Yeah, it's lovely to see the details that they bring to the space also. It's very, for some characters, some actors, it's really, really highly nuanced, and other ones just step right in and go to set and just do their job. So everyone kind of approaches it differently, but it was a lot of fun to see her process.
So Sam, Traitors definitely can't say 70s, maybe 70s in a different century. I don't know what I am more excited about week to week when I'm watching the Traitors, finding out who's going to win or just seeing what Alan Cumming is about to wear. Can you talk a little bit about how do you figure out these designs for Alan? They are stunning.
Thank you. Yeah, so the first season this show started, there was conversation about Alan being this dandy character, and so we originally dressed him as just like sort of a dandy Scottish gentleman, and then there was this appetite from the fans and from the network to push it a little further, and because we were seeing such a love for the campy aspect of his wardrobe, and so we pushed it the second season. And in the second season, we sort of were more inspired by the missions that the contestants were competing for. So I was inspired by whatever the contestants were doing in the episode. And then that carried over into the third season, sorry. And so each and every season is sort of becoming more and more dramatic in look and more campy and more sort of out there. And we're lucky that Alan is able to pull off anything. Like Cynthia, Alan is able to pull off anything. He's game to try anything. And we've just been pushing it each and every season. We're inspired by the mission, but there's an episode where they're introducing three new contestants, and they are hanging in cages from trees. So I used the cages as inspiration and built a caged skirt that I worked with a Scottish designer who is known for kilt making, and she bedazzled and beaded the Scottish kilt and made a corset for him with feathers and beads and jewels. And then like for the wedding episode, I wanted Alan to look like this glam bride, but so he comes into breakfast and he's in a traditional men's suit. And then for the mission, and this is with every episode, we like to have like a reveal. So at breakfast, he's a little more subdued. He's in a more subdued version of the outfit. And then for each mission, there's a big reveal. So the viewer kind of has like an exciting moment where something more exciting is revealed at the mission. And then for the round table, it's a pared down version of the same outfit. And that's because the round table is really more about the contestants kicking somebody off. And so Alan is just guiding them through that process.
I think I would be distracted if Alan was wearing that same wedding. That the wedding dress was absolutely my favorite outfit this season. I mean, just fantastic.
Thank you. I wanted it to, and Ellen and I love to play with gender, but I wanted to play with gender here. And I think it's amazing that on, a network show like this or network series like this, that we're able to play with gender in this day and age. And that we have someone as prominent as Alan that's willing to go there and do that. And even as he's himself, but he's sort of playing this character, and there's not that many shows that offer this opportunity.
So for these outfits, you go to a lot of? You were just saying with the skirt, you went to someone to bedazzle it and everything. Do you go to a lot of people in the areas that you shoot in Scotland to help with the outfits?
Yeah, so I use people all over the world now. So things are made for me in Asia now, in Scotland. I like, there mostly every outfit has a hint towards Scotland. So I'm working with, weavers that are weaving tartans for us in Scotland, but then, costume builders that are based all over the world are helping me create these looks.
You were just saying the idea of like the playing with gender and all this stuff. That the wedding outfit I managed to see in person too, which was incredible, and you can see the addition of the dress onto the pants. It fantastic. How did you get to that point where everyone was comfortable playing with gender there? Was that something that you and Alan decided this is something that just works here?
Yeah, I mean it's been so organic, the process. It was never a discussion with the producers or the network. We just sort of have done it and it's worked. And him being such a prominent queer icon is like the perfect person to be doing it. And I don't know, it just sort of works. The show is campy and it's fun, and so it's just a perfect way to play with that. You know, Alan's talked about it, but traditionally a kilt is very masculine in Scotland, and only in America does it seem to be, feminine for a guy to be wearing a kilt, but because it's a skirt. But you know, in history, Scottish men have worn skilts or kilts, and it's been very masculine for them to do so. So there's that we're also playing with.
And kind of going back to Ernesto a little bit, the idea of masculinity in these outfits for the men too, because you were talking about everything had to be a little more sexy for the men, which I think there's like kind of a flair to it that has died down a bit as time has gone on. Now everything seems to be just plain suits rather than somebody.
I think it's come full circle.
Mm-hmm.
I think things are like very much the '70s right now. I was looking at Marnie and all these designers, and they're all doing the pants that I was making. I was copying patterns and things from the costume houses for Kevin and for Terrence. The stitching on the jeans, the patchwork, all of that. I had to recreate. And now I see it in the store. I said, "Oh my God, I could have bought it." you know, I mean, really, I've been seeing the exact same stuff in the stores.
Now, if the show was just made a little bit later, you could have brought all.
Well, if they had a little bit more stock too, they need a lot. It's amazing how much work and how much volume of you know things we made. Like one or two suits is it's quite a lot of effort and work into making them. The fabrics, the. I was very lucky. I had all 10 scripts up front, so I had a lot of time to line everything up. Unlike Leah, who has to make everything on the in 15 minutes, I couldn't do it. I could not have done it. Too many people.
Yeah, Leah, I don't know how you do that. That just sounds absolutely incredible.
I truly, the answer is my team. I mean, we have the most incredibly talented, dedicated design team and wardrobe team. I mean, we become a family. Everybody's on board. No one will let anyone fail. We have an incredibly supportive department. And so, from our PAs to our tailors to the assistant designers, to our shopping team, a lot of the people I worked with for 20 years. You have a shorthand in many ways that allows you to move at a real clip. And having for example, a super seasoned director like Ryan Johnson, who is able to give you clarity and concise decision making, helps you move at that pace. But we always use the phrase, like, I think Natasha started it early in the season, of just like strong choices. Just come. It's okay to just like uh, just pick a lane and try it. And that gave us some freedom, actually, to just sort of like, okay, I'm going to throw a wild card, but I think it's the one. Um, it sometimes having no time makes you be more edited. At least for me, I know if I have space, I'll fill that rack with lots of ideas. And then sometimes I just don't have. When I don't have the luxury to do that, I'm just like, well, I guess that's the one. Let's hope it works.
And Sam, while Leah and Ernesto have to make so many of the same costume, do you have to make multiples of Alan's costumes, or is it just the one?
Just one, and we are really, really edited, and it goes from producers giving me the missions for each episode a few months ahead of filming, and then we do a lot of research, mood boarding, and presenting back to them in the network for approval. And then we're sourcing, sketching, building, and then we fit about a month to 3 weeks before filming, and then we have that period to finalize and embellish, which we do a ton of, like, beading and sculpting and crazy embellishing during that period. But it always does sort of feel like a scramble at the last minute. They pick up the clothes about a week before filming, and so it feels like a Project Runway episode where we're working up until the last second to get every little detail done. There's an incredible amount of detail that goes into each of his outfits. Scottish wear has a lot of. There's the sporin, which is the little bag that goes over the kill. There's flashes that are the things that go around the sock. So everything has to match, and we do a lot of beading and stuff like that I've mentioned, but there's incredible amount of detail that goes into each one of them. So we're working up until the very last second.
Do you work with Alan on some of these designs, or are some of these a surprise to him?
No, never a surprise. He and I are in communication throughout the year, whether we're in production or not. Whether there's a fashion show that's just happened where I'm texting him pictures or of inspiration for next season. We're constantly in communication over the inspiration. And then I'm texting him or calling him throughout the whole process and showing him progress pics of every outfit. And a lot of that's just for fun, but also to get his buy-in. It's really important to me that he's satisfied and that he is on board with everything. And, because he is playing himself and it's not just a character, there's a little bit of that he has to be happy in each outfit. So I want to make sure he's comfortable.
There's something I want to ask from everybody here. Each of the shows obviously has amazing outfits. Is there any outfit that stands out to you as something, not just your favorite, but an outfit that was maybe challenging to finish, or you were particularly proud of once you actually completed it? We can kind of start with Ernesto.
That's funny. Mine was the simplest costume, and it's the one that I needed the many multiples of, was Kevin Hart's denim suit with an orange shirt that he wears with lots of orange stitching all over the denim. That was to me the most beautiful suit. I would wear it today. It was great. It photographed beautifully. It looked great on him, and it's something that I'm seeing now all over the place, like Gucci, and I just love that look. It was great. That was my favorite by far, even more than Samuel L. Jackson's beautiful, uh, his tailor-made suits. They were Savile Row. I thought Kevin's denim suit was, for me, my favorite, and the shirt.
You're seeing all these outfits. Now I'm starting to think that people are stealing your designs.
Well, you know, it's there. You just have to. I really recreated everything. What I found that I liked, I drew it. We made it. I had great tailor in Los Angeles, and I too had very great tailors and seamstresses working. I was not working in my home state. I was working in Atlanta, so it was a bit challenging. Everything had to be shipped in, and so. But I had a great crew in Atlanta.
And Leah, was there any outfit that stood out to you?
I'll be honest, it's so hard for me to pick one thing because the pace of that show and how every single episode was a completely different universe. I feel like every episode we were sort of like, oh my God, I can't believe we got it on camera. Just that people are dressed. I mean, we basically had 2 days every week where we were doing the whole episode because of the way casting lined up. So I mean, it was everything. We designed sports teams. Like we did a whole baseball episode. I know nothing about baseball, so that was a learning curve. But even just designing the color palette, the graphics, a mascot based on a Hungarian 17th century warrior. We did a parochial school where we had 150 children we had to dress in uniform. We had a wedding episode that was based on a persona of a guy who owned an energy drink company. And so the whole wedding was branded. So I had to incorporate the palette of the branding of the energy drink into the wedding party, into the bride's gown, into so the bridesmaids' dresses were one color, the groomsmen represented another, the bride had an underlay to her skirt. All this happened, pretty much happens in like 2 days. So it's like being, it's like being, like Sam said, it's like an episode of Project Runway. Really every episode, is just bananas. There's just, we had ninja, what does a contemporary spy ninja look like? It's like there was no sort of world that we didn't, we did a 70s noir film within the show. It was a movie within the TV show in our second episode that Natasha directed, where there was also references to Sun Ra and heliotrope, like lots of sort of obscure 70s sci-fi. So we touched a lot of worlds. So I don't have a singular answer, except that it was a lot of fun and bonkers at the same time.
I don't know if I would have a singular answer either. Sam, what about you?
I mean, each of my outfits are like babies to me because they become so detail driven. But I really loved. There's in the second to last episode of this season, there was an outfit that was inspired by Mary Queen of Scots, and I realized that we hadn't used her as inspiration before, and why not? Because we could play. First of all, she had amazing style with patterns and textures. So I used that as inspiration. I worked with a designer in LA called Michael No, and he built this costume for us that was really like dramatic and campy. It had voluminous blue velvet sleeves. And it came back, and the producers and network were a little worried that it was too much and pushing it a little too far, but I knew that it wasn't. I knew that it would be a success. We just had to sort of edit it down a little bit and alter it in ways that would fit Alan better and would look better on camera. But it ended up being great. It had elements of punk with like a black vinyl overlay to a kilt, which Alan pulls up really well, the punk vibe, since he's like an East Village, New York icon. I love that outfit, but there's also the cape that we've used every season in the final episode where the winner is mentioned, or chosen. So the cape I built originally for season 1. It was pretty basic. It's a teal cape with a hood. And then in the second season, we bedazzled it a little bit. And then Alan sort of said, why don't we just continue adding things to it to make it ridiculous and crazy every season? So it's sort of become like a vest that a TGI Fridays waiter wears, where we just continue to add flair to it. And the more the merrier. And we're already discussing next season what to do with it. And Alan has this idea that is kind of fun, and the producers are thinking it's too much. So there's always sort of this like back and forth of how do we push the boundaries without being too much, but also have fun with it.
Well, no, I cannot wait to see that.
I think Alan's gonna win, and I might just, don't tell anyone, but I might just do what he wants and not even tell them and ship it and see what happens.
Well, that is all the time we have. I could spend all this time talking to you. My God, this was so much fun. Thank you, Leah, Ernesto, and Sam, for joining me for this.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Success.
For me.
It's so inspiring listening to everybody's process.